in that crepuscular condition that Dick was talking about, at that twilight hour, either early morning or late afternoon. And they're built for that because they're, the way that they look blends in perfectly in those light conditions. Think about what color is the sunset? Orange, right? They're living in tall grass or in wooded habitat. That dappled light, orange light, they're going to blend in perfectly in those conditions. They also have the stripes to help them blend. They also have that tapetum lucidum in the eye that Dick talked about. And they have that distinctive white eyeliner. So if you look very closely on the front of a tiger's eye, just in front of the eye, there's a little bit of a white line. And the thought is that that's actually adding the last little bit of light to bounce into the eye. So that even in a low light condition, the tigers are getting as much light as they can, and they're processing it as efficiently as they can because of the rods in the eye that they talked about, and because of the tapetum lucidum, the back of the eye as well. Typically, these animals are solitary, as I mentioned. And let's scroll to get to the right slide here.
I think she said the computer is frozen.
Oh, the computer is frozen.
She's going to get another laptop.
That's most unfortunate. Okay. Okay, so the interesting thing about tigers is that their territory size is different. So the male has a much larger territory than the female. So the female will guard, let's say, maybe like a 10 square mile territory, and the male may have twice that of territory. And his territory is going to overlap, potentially with several females' territories as well. So that during the time when the female is receptive, he's going to try to go into her territory and hook up with her. But when she's not receptive, she is not going to want him in her territory, and she's going to fight about it. So he's got to keep on moving. And the males, as I said, in most carnivores, the males are larger, and that is also true in the case of tigers. One of the fascinating things about tigers, they do live alone in the hot jungles of Asia by themselves, and they often, unlike lions, for the most part lions won't do this, but tigers will swim. In fact, sometimes they'll drag their prey into the water after a hunt, or they may just play in the water, even as young cubs if their mother is watching over them. There are severe threats to tigers in the world. So habitat loss being the #1 threat.
Cindy, is this where you are?
Yes. Great.
It seems to have started.
Oh, it started up again. Okay.
Let's see.
I think this computer hates us for some reason. So the habitat loss is really severe. Asia's population is exploding for humans, and they're increasingly going into the areas where tigers live, and that creates conflict situations. So habitat loss is #1. The traditional Chinese medicine trade is extremely harmful to tigers. There are thoughts in the TCM trade that a tiger penis makes a human male more vigorous. Doubt it. Just saying. You gotta kill a tiger, something's wrong with your masculinity, in my opinion. Also, the tigers are hunted for their coats, for their teeth, for all kinds of things. But the traditional Chinese medicine trade, the traffic in those parts is extremely harmful for tigers. And also poaching is yet another threat to these tigers. So even during the time that I've been a docent for about roughly 15 years, the tiger populations have plummeted, even during that time. So it's one of those species that may in fact disappear in my lifetime, and I cannot handle that at all. That's just heartbreaking to me. So we have to do everything that we possibly can to educate the public and the world about the importance of saving these species. Not just because we love tigers and they're fantastic, magnificent, important animals, which they are, but also because tigers, again, fulfill those roles in the ecosystem. If you do not have the apex predator and you do not have that keystone species, all of those ecosystems start to get out of whack pretty quickly. And when that happens, we're unraveling the natural fabric upon which all of those humans who live in Asia, we're unraveling that whole ecosystem for those people too. So, important species to think about. You can see on this slide, you can actually see the white line in front of the eye that I mentioned a moment ago. And that again, it's just a one little last chance for light to get into the eye to help the tiger to see in conditions like that. Another cool aspect of the tiger's biology is typically they have these white marks on the back of their ears. And the thought for that is that it's actually related to raising their young. So when a mother tiger, for example, is leading her young out for the first time on a hunting expedition, she can actually use her ears to signal her offspring to stay back or to do various different kinds of things. We don't really understand the ear language of the tigers, but those spots are thought to be an indicator for the young to be able to key in on the mother from the rear side. More about the felidae. There are the roaring cats, like I mentioned, the lion, the leopard, the jaguar, the tiger. The purring cats are the mountain lion, our own domestic mountain lion, the cougar. Also the bobcat is a purring cat, and domestic fluffy at home is also a purring cat. The only cat that chirps is the cheetah, and that's easy to remember. Chirp, chirp, cheetah, chirp. Great, that will be easy for you at home. So, we may take a bio break after this, but I first need to ask you this. Please tell me the name of the most lethal carnivore of them all.
Cats. House cats.
Domestic cat is the most lethal predator in the world. By most lethal, I mean does the most killing of any species on the planet. Now, this slide was made a couple years ago when we did the docent training for the last time. The domestic cat has a devastating impact on native wildlife and on ecosystems into which it is released. Feral cats represent a very serious menace in the ecosystem because they are actually preying on wildlife that's trying to survive, especially in the urban edge habitats upon which a lot of the feral cat colonies are supported by humans, which I wish they were not, because it's not a good life for a feral cat. If you love cats, really the life of a feral cat is pretty horrible. But in addition, they're doing a lot of killing of native wildlife. This slide was done a couple years ago, and the data is actually new. I need to give you new information. So it says the roaming pet cats kill an estimated 500 million native and migratory birds each year. That number has now been revised based on Smithsonian Institution data to be at least 2.4 billion. 2.4 billion with a B. Killings by native cats, by domestic cats of native wildlife. And that's just birds. That's not counting all the native rodents and the other things that they kill. So that's very worrisome for those of us who care about wildlife, because wildlife's not always megafauna, right? Sometimes it's our native songbirds in our backyard. So, okay, the free-ranging cats kill more wildlife, especially the native and neotropical songbirds, each year than any single species. If you know anything about birds, which hopefully you do or will through docent training, those birds often spend some time on the ground, so they're extremely vulnerable to domestic cats also. Domestic cats also present a harm in our local environment because they have in their feces a parasite which is contaminated and spread through the watershed. And that parasite is deadly for California sea otter. So that is toxoplasmosis, which will kill a sea otter. And as you know, sea otter populations, while they are rebounding a little bit, they need more help. Roaming pet cats are exposed to a lot of risks as well. So to automobile predators, to fights with other creatures. They generally have a much shorter lifespan than indoor cats. So it's a really good idea to encourage, whenever possible, visitors to love your cat, enrich your cat at home, indoors. And if it is going to go outside in the backyard, make sure it's supervised or leashed or in some way protected from harming wildlife. Please encourage people to spay and neuter and to keep all their cats litter properly disposed of. Never flush them down the toilet into the watershed. Okay, so should we take a bio break? Do you guys need a bathroom break? Yeah. Okay, we'll take a very brief 3-minute break. 3 minutes? Okay.